This story is titled, Mom and Dad Threw Me Out on My Anniversary. Now the entire family is trying to steal my new apartment by claiming it's their family nest. Hey Reddit, I'm Ryan, 29 years old, and I have one hell of a story to share with all of you. I've been working as a content marketing assistant for the past few years. It's not exactly a glamorous job, but it pays some bills and gives me enough financial stability to help support my family. I currently live with my parents and my younger brother Kevin in our family home. To put it mildly, our living situation isn't ideal. The house is cramped, constantly falling apart, and always seems to smell like old carpet no matter how much cleaning we do. Despite the less than perfect conditions, I've been contributing a significant amount to our household. I pay a big chunk of the monthly bills, buy groceries every week, and handle repairs whenever something inevitably breaks down. You'd think this level of contribution would earn me some appreciation from my family, but that's hardly been the case. Every time I walk through the front door, I can hear my mom, Brenda, talking down to me. Her favorite line is, "Ryan, when are you going to get a real job?" I've never fully understood what she even means by a real job. I bust my ass at work day in and day out. Content marketing isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. It requires creativity, strategic thinking, and constant adaptation to changing digital trends. But because I'm not a doctor or lawyer with some prestigious title, it apparently doesn't count in her eyes. Whenever I try to defend myself and explain the value of my profession, I always get the same response. If it was a real job, you'd have your own place by now. Yeah, okay, Mom. Never mind the fact that I'm helping keep this household afloat with my supposedly fake job. Then there's Kevin, my 25-year-old brother. We've never really gotten along, to be honest. He has this perpetually smug attitude and is always looking down on me as if he's somehow better. He thinks his social media following makes him special, but meanwhile, he barely lifts a finger around the house. Guess who picks up the slack? Me, of course, and no one seems to care about the imbalance or acknowledge my contributions. My 30th birthday was approaching, and despite everything, I was actually excited about it. Sounds dumb, right? But I really thought maybe this year would be different. I even saved up for a nice cake from this fancy bakery downtown in Chicago. I wasn't expecting anything extravagant. Just a small celebration with the four of us. Nothing big, but I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd actually show that they care about me for once. A few days before my birthday, I sat down with my mom and dad, Walter, to discuss some modest celebration plans. Hey, I was thinking we could do something for my birthday this weekend, I suggested, trying to keep my hopes in check. Just hang out, maybe have some cake. My mom didn't even look up from the magazine she was reading. We'll see, Ryan. We might have plans, she replied dismissively. Plans? On my birthday? I should have known something was up, but I didn't want to believe it. I had been living in that house my whole life, helping out, working hard. Why would they have plans that didn't include me on my birthday of all days? Fast forward to my birthday. I was feeling pretty good that morning, despite my lingering concerns about my family's plans. I went to work as usual and was pleasantly surprised to receive a bunch of happy birthday messages from my coworkers. They actually remembered, which lifted my spirits considerably. I even treated myself to a new jacket during my lunch break, a small celebration gift to myself. Things were looking up, and I started to think that maybe I'd get home and they'd have a surprise waiting for me. Nothing fancy, just a card, a cake, or any small acknowledgement that today was special. As I pulled into the driveway after work, my stomach immediately dropped. All of my stuff was scattered across the front lawn. Boxes, bags, clothes, books. Everything I owned thrown out like trash. I jumped out of my car, my heart pounding against my ribcage. I rushed to the porch, and there they were. Mom, Dad, and Kevin just standing there staring at me like some twisted family meeting was about to commence. My heart was racing, and I couldn't think straight. "What's going on?" I asked, trying desperately to keep my voice from shaking. Mom stepped forward, her face cold and emotionless, as if she didn't care at all about what was happening. "Ryan, it's time for you to move out. You're not welcome here anymore," she stated flatly. I stood there frozen, unable to process what she was saying. Move out? On my birthday? What kind of sick joke was this? I looked over at my dad, hoping he'd step in and say something. Tell me this was all a misunderstanding. But no, he just stared at the ground with his hands in his pockets, unable to even look me in the eye. I felt a rush of anger and confusion washing over me. But it's my birthday. Where am I supposed to go? My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded in that moment. Kevin chimed in with a smirk that made me want to scream, "Maybe you should have thought about that before being such a burden all these years." A burden? I was paying bills, buying food, and keeping this crappy house from falling apart. How was I the burden in this scenario? I looked at my mom, hoping for some explanation. Something that would make sense of this cruel situation. "It wasn't enough," she said, her voice sharp like a slap across my face. "We need the space, and frankly, you need to grow up." That was it. No empathy, no second chances. Just cold indifference from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them see me break down. "Can I at least get my things?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're all packed," Mom replied, gesturing to the boxes on the lawn like it was no big deal. "You should go now." That was it. Happy birthday to me. I started loading boxes into my car, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The whole situation felt surreal, like I was living someone else's nightmare. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask them how they could be so heartless, but I didn't. I just kept moving, one box after another, trying to hold myself together as best I could. After I finished packing up the last of my things, I turned to look at them one last time, hoping, praying they'd change their minds, that they'd realize how utterly messed up this was. "Why today? Why on my birthday?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. Mom didn't even blink. "Consider it our gift to you, independence." Just like that, I was gone. On what should have been a day of celebration, I found myself driving away from the only home I'd ever known, with no idea where I was headed. I ended up at a cheap motel, the kind with a flickering neon sign out front, spending my birthday alone, surrounded by hastily packed belongings. As I sat staring at the ceiling, I wondered how the people who were supposed to love me could be so cruel. How could they do this to me? Their own son. On my birthday. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never rely on them again. I would pick myself up no matter how hard it got. I was clearly on my own now. After the whole birthday fiasco, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. It wasn't just about getting kicked out, though that definitely sucked. It was realizing that the people who were supposed to have my back just didn't care. I spent that night in a dingy motel room trying to wrap my head around it all, but there was no making sense of it. The next day, I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself into work. What else was I going to do? I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had bills to pay, and now I needed to find a place to live on top of everything else. My boss, Olivia, noticed pretty quickly that something was off. I was at the office at all hours, hunched over my laptop, answering emails like some kind of robot. She's sharp. It didn't take long for her to pull me aside. It was late, and the office was practically empty when she found me still at my desk. "Ryan, can we talk?" she asked, leaning on the edge of my cubicle. I looked up, and I must have looked like a complete mess because she gave me this concerned look that almost broke me. "You're going to work yourself into the ground at this rate. What's going on?" I didn't want to get into it. After all, who wants to dump their personal problems on their boss? But the second she asked, it all came pouring out. I told her everything. How my family had kicked me out on my birthday, how I was staying in a horrible motel with all my stuff still in boxes, how I had nowhere to go. As I talked, Olivia's expression softened. She didn't say anything at first, just listened, which was more than my family had ever done for me. When I finished, she let out a sigh. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked gently. I shrugged, feeling embarrassed. I mean, she's my boss, not my therapist. But she didn't seem to mind that I just unloaded all of this on her. "Look, Ryan, I have a spare room in my place," she said, surprising me completely. "It's not much, but you're welcome to stay until you figure things out." I couldn't believe it. I didn't know how to respond at first. "Are you serious?" I asked, half expecting her to change her mind. But she smiled and nodded. "Of course. I know what it's like to be in a tough spot. Don't worry about it." I was so relieved I almost started crying again, but managed to hold it together. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know how to repay you." She waved me off. "Don't even mention it. You've been killing it at work, and I'd hate to see you burn out. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself." Just like that, I had a place to stay. It wasn't home, but it was something. I packed up my stuff from the motel and moved into Olivia's guest room the next day. It was a little small, but it was clean, warm, and quiet. All I needed at that point. That first night there, I sat on the bed just trying to process everything. I felt a little better, but there was still this hole in my chest, like everything I thought I knew had been ripped away. I didn't let myself wallow too long, though. I threw myself into work even harder, if that was even possible. Olivia wasn't kidding when she said she'd push me harder at work. I honestly appreciated it. It kept me distracted from my personal life. I took on more freelance gigs, too. I figured the more money I could save, the faster I could get out on my own and start building a real life for myself. It wasn't easy, though. There were nights where I stayed up until 3 a.m., staring at my computer, trying to crank out designs while my mind kept drifting back to my family. I kept thinking maybe they'd call, maybe they'd apologize, maybe they'd realize they messed up. But no, nothing. Just radio silence. During all this, my best friend Ethan was an absolute godsend. We'd been friends since college, and even though we weren't living in the same city anymore, we'd always stayed close. I told him what happened, and he was furious on my behalf. "I can't believe they'd do that to you," he said during one of our calls. "You deserve better than that, Ryan." He wasn't wrong, but it still stung to think about it. "Yeah, well, it is what it is," I muttered, trying to sound nonchalant. "I just have to keep moving forward." Ethan, being the joker he is, tried to lighten the mood. "You know what would really piss them off?" he said with a laugh. "You becoming wildly successful and rubbing it in their faces." I laughed, but the idea stuck with me. Not that I wanted revenge. Okay, maybe a little. But mostly I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need them, that I could make it on my own. So that became my mission. Work harder, save more, and eventually get out of Olivia's guest room into a place of my own. Over the next few months, things started looking up. My designs were getting noticed by bigger clients, bringing in more money than I'd ever had before. I kept telling myself that every late night and every all-nighter was worth it. Honestly, it was. I was slowly but surely rebuilding my life, one project at a time. I started to feel like maybe I didn't need my family after all. Sure, it hurt, and it probably always would to some degree. But proving to myself that I could not only survive, but actually thrive without them, that felt good. Really good. One day, Olivia pulled me into her office. She had this huge grin on her face that immediately made me curious. "Ryan, I've got some good news," she said, practically bouncing with excitement. "How does lead designer sound to you? With a raise, of course." I was speechless. My jaw must have hit the floor because I couldn't form words for a solid 10 seconds. "Are you serious?" I finally blurted out, feeling like I might pass out from excitement. "Dead serious," she said, still grinning from ear to ear. "You've earned it. You've been doing incredible work, and it's time to recognize that." I couldn't believe it. Lead designer. Me. It felt like all the hard work, sleepless nights, and stress were finally paying off in a tangible way. "Thank you," I managed to say, still in a state of shock. "Don't thank me yet," she said, winking. "You're going to have a lot more responsibility now." I didn't care about that part. I was ready for it. This was what I'd been working toward all this time. With the promotion and all the freelance gigs I'd been stacking up, I was finally in a place where I could start thinking about my next move. Literally. I wasn't going to stay in Olivia's guest room forever, and now I could actually start looking for a place of my own. But it wasn't just about the money or the job. It was about finally feeling like I was in control of my life again. For so long, I'd felt stuck. Stuck in that house with my family, stuck in their expectations, stuck in their constant judgment. But now, I was free. I was making my own decisions and building my own life. No one could take that away from me. I was finally moving forward, and it felt damn good. A few weeks after I got promoted to lead designer, I was really starting to feel like I had my life together. I'd been working nonstop, saving money, and was even thinking about getting my own place soon. Things were really looking up. But of course, right when you think everything is going smoothly, life decides to throw a wrench in the gears. It started on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of working on a big project when my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it. Just figured it was an email or something work-related. When I glanced at the screen, I saw a name I least expected. Kevin. My brother. The last person I wanted to hear from. For a second, I just stared at my phone. Part of me didn't want to answer. I hadn't heard from Kevin or my parents since they kicked me out on my birthday. Honestly, I didn't miss them. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Ryan, it's me," Kevin replied. His voice was quieter than usual, not his typical cocky tone, which threw me off guard. "I know it's you," I said, a little annoyed. "What do you want?" There was a long pause on the other end. For a moment, I thought he'd hung up, but then he spoke again. I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I need help. I raised an eyebrow, not believing what I was hearing. Kevin needing help from me? The same brother who stood there and watched while my stuff was thrown out onto the front lawn? Yeah, right. I don't know what to tell you, I replied, already feeling anger bubbling up inside me. You made it pretty clear I'm not part of the family anymore. He let out a sigh. Look, I know things have been rough, but this isn't about that. It's about Dad. He lost his job and Mom's spending is out of control. I can't afford school anymore. And there it was. The real reason for the call. It wasn't about me or making amends or even caring about what had happened. It was about money. It was always about money. I bit my lip, fighting back the wave of emotions that hit me. Part of me wanted to tell him off, remind him of how they had treated me, hang up, and never look back. But another part, a small, stupid part, still felt that pull of obligation. They were my family after all, or at least they used to be. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You're calling me now after months of silence because you need money? It's not just about money, Kevin said quickly. We're in a bad spot, Ryan. You know how Mom is. She's been spending like crazy and Dad, well, he's not exactly doing great without a job. I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. That sounds like a you problem, Kevin, not mine. Come on, Ryan, we're family, he said. I could practically hear the desperation in his voice. It was the first time in years he'd sounded vulnerable to me, but I wasn't falling for it. Family, I scoffed, unable to stop the bitterness from seeping into my tone. You guys threw me out on my birthday. Family doesn't do that. He didn't have an answer for that. Just a long pause that told me everything I needed to know. I'm done being your backup plan, I said, my voice firm. You and Mom and Dad made it pretty clear where I stand with you all. Don't call me again. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hand was shaking slightly as I set my phone down on the desk. I felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. It felt good to stand up for myself, to finally put my foot down and say no. But at the same time, it sucked that it had come to this. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at the wall, trying to process everything. I kept thinking about all the times I had bent over backward for my family, all the times I'd sacrificed my own happiness for theirs. And where had it gotten me? Homeless on my birthday. It was time to stop feeling guilty for walking away. They had made their choice and I had made mine. After that call, I threw myself back into work. I didn't want to dwell on it too long. I knew it would just drag me down. So I focused on the project I was working on, trying to push thoughts of Kevin and my parents to the back of my mind. But the thing is, once those thoughts creep in, they're hard to get rid of. That night as I lay in bed, I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I kept thinking about what I could have said, what I should have said. I wanted to believe that maybe deep down they were sorry, but I knew better. They weren't calling because they missed me or because they regretted what they did. They were calling because they needed something from me. I wasn't about to let them use me again. The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined than ever. It was time to focus on me, on building my life, my career, and my future. I couldn't keep looking back. I couldn't keep wondering if things could have been different. They weren't, and that was just the reality of it. From that day forward, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let my family drag me down anymore. I'd been through enough. I was finally in a place where I was starting to build something good for myself, and I wasn't about to let them ruin that. Sure, part of me still felt guilty for cutting them off, for not helping when they were clearly in a tough spot. But then I reminded myself, where were they when I was struggling? Where were they when I needed help? Yeah, I didn't owe them anything, so I kept going. I worked hard, saved money, and kept my focus on the future. Every time I started to feel that old guilt creeping in, I reminded myself of that phone call. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. Honestly, it felt good to finally be free. I finally saved up enough to buy a really nice apartment. It was honestly the best thing that had happened to me in a long time. I was in the middle of a project, knee-deep in designs, completely focused when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it might be a package or something. I'd been ordering a bunch of stuff for work lately, so I didn't think twice about it. But when I checked the security camera, I froze. There, standing on my porch, were my parents and Kevin. My stomach did this weird flip, like someone had punched me in the gut. They hadn't reached out since that call from Kevin weeks ago. I thought we were done. So why the hell were they here? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down before opening the door. My mind was racing with all the possible reasons they could be standing there. Maybe they were here to apologize, or maybe they just needed something else from me. Honestly, I didn't know which would be worse. When I opened the door, Mom, Brenda, didn't even wait for me to say anything. She pushed past me like she owned the place, her eyes scanning my living room like she was appraising it for auction. "Wow, Ryan, you've really done well for yourself," she said, with this weird smile on her face. The kind that wasn't really a smile at all, but more of a calculated assessment. I just stood there stunned as Kevin followed her in, looking uncomfortable, while Dad, Walter, shuffled in last, hands stuffed in his pockets like he had no idea what to do with himself. "What are you guys doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding and I could feel the tension building up inside me. I knew this wasn't going to be a good conversation, but I was hoping, maybe just maybe, that I was wrong. Mom turned around, that fake smile still plastered on her face. "We're here to talk about living arrangements." I blinked, confused by what she meant. "What?" Dad cleared his throat. For the first time since they arrived, he spoke up. "We think it's time for the family to be back together." I almost laughed. It was so absurd, so ridiculous, that for a second I thought they were joking. "You're joking, right?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. Mom's smile faded. She crossed her arms, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "No, Ryan. We've talked it over, and we think it's time we all live together again. As a family." I stared at her, speechless. This had to be some kind of prank or sick joke. After everything that's happened? After you kicked me out on my birthday? And now you want to move in with me? Kevin, who had been silent until now, chimed in with his usual smug tone. "Come on, Ryan, don't be so dramatic. That's all in the past." I felt my blood boil at his dismissive attitude. "All in the past? You guys threw me out on my birthday. You left me with nowhere to go, no support, nothing. And now you want to just waltz back into my life like nothing happened?" Mom's expression hardened. "We gave you the push you needed," she said, her voice cold and matter-of-fact. "And look how well you've done because of it. You should be thanking us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were actually trying to take credit for my success, for everything I had worked my ass off for since they abandoned me. So what? You think you can just show up, claim credit for my hard work, and what? Move in here? "This is my home, not yours," I said, feeling my frustration mounting with each word. Dad, trying to play peacemaker as usual, stepped forward. "Ryan, be reasonable. We're struggling right now. You have all this space, and we thought it'd be nice to be together again." I shook my head, my frustration building with every word they said. "You're only here because you need something. You didn't care about me when I was struggling, and now you expect me to help you? That's not how this works." Mom's face twisted with anger. "We're your family, Ryan. We sacrificed for you. Everything you have is because of us." I couldn't hold back anymore. Years of resentment came pouring out. "Sacrificed what exactly? What did you sacrifice, Mom? You kicked me out. You didn't help me when I needed it most. You threw me away like I was nothing. And now you think you're entitled to my success? To my home?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. "I've worked hard for this. I've built this life for myself with no help from you. You don't get to walk in here and claim anything." Kevin rolled his eyes. "God, Ryan, stop being so selfish. We're just asking for a little help." That word, selfish, set me off like nothing else could have. Selfish? You want to talk about selfish? How about you all throwing me out of the house, leaving me with nothing? How about showing up here now demanding I give you a place to stay because you've screwed up your own lives? That's selfish, Kevin, not me. Dad stepped forward again, his voice softer, almost pleading. "Ryan, please. We're just asking for a chance." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. "No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to use me anymore." Mom's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Fine. If you want to be difficult, we'll take legal action. We have rights, you know." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were threatening me with legal action now? Legal action? On what grounds? "We'll find something," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Don't push me, Ryan." I let out a bitter laugh. The audacity was almost impressive. "Go ahead, try. But let me tell you something. This is my house, and you have no right to it. You're not moving in. Not now, not ever." They didn't say anything for a moment. I could see the anger and frustration building in their faces, but I didn't care. I wasn't backing down this time. Finally, I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. "Get out," I said, my voice steady and firm. "Now." They hesitated for a moment, but I stood firm, waiting for them to leave. Mom huffed, shooting me a look full of hatred before marching out. Dad followed her, looking like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Then Kevin, who just shook his head in disbelief, walked out without another word. As soon as they were gone, I closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My heart was still racing, and my hands were shaking, but I felt a weird sense of relief wash over me, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. Not now. Not ever. After I kicked my family out of my house, things got quiet again. I'm not going to lie. It was a relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life, like I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the end of it. Mom had thrown out that threat about legal action, and even though I didn't think she had anything to stand on legally, I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't done trying to weasel their way back into my life. A few days later, I got a call from Ethan. I was lucky that one of my closest friends is also a lawyer. I had mentioned the whole situation to him in passing, but hadn't gone into all the details. Now that my family had crossed the line, I figured it was time to get some real advice. "Hey, Ryan," Ethan said when I answered. "You free to talk? I've been thinking about your situation." "Yeah, sure," I replied, suddenly feeling a bit anxious. "What's up?" "I've been looking into your parents' situation a bit more," he said, his tone becoming more serious. "I know you mentioned they've been struggling financially, and you're worried they might try something shady. Well, I did some digging, and it turns out they're in deeper trouble than you thought." My heart sank. I didn't want to hear this, but I knew I needed to. "What do you mean?" I asked. "There's a history of financial issues, Ryan," Ethan explained. "Tax problems, debt. It's not just that your dad lost his job and your mom's been overspending. They've been digging themselves into a hole for years. And now that you've made it clear they can't rely on you, they're getting desperate." I sat there processing what Ethan was saying. My mind flashed back to Mom's smug threats, her talking about legal action, her entitlement to what I'd worked for. It all made sense now. This wasn't just about needing help. They were trying to find a way out of their own mess, and they saw me as their ticket out. "So, what do I do?" I asked, feeling that familiar weight of stress settling on my shoulders. Ethan was quiet for a second before answering. "Well, first off, you need to protect yourself. They might not have much of a case to try and take anything from you, but people do stupid things when they're desperate. We should file for a restraining order to make sure they can't harass you anymore. You've got enough evidence of their behavior, those threats, them showing up at your house. It's time to take some legal steps. A restraining order." That sounded extreme, but at the same time, I knew it was the right move. My family had already shown they didn't respect my boundaries, and if they were desperate enough to keep pushing, I needed to protect myself. "I'll do it," I said, feeling a sense of resolve strengthen inside me. "Let's file the restraining order." Ethan talked me through the process, and within a few days, we had everything in motion. The restraining order wasn't just about stopping them from coming to my house. It was about finally drawing a line. I wasn't going to let them drag me into their mess. I had worked too hard to get where I was, and I wasn't about to let their issues derail my progress. As all this was happening, I noticed something strange. I started getting weird messages from mutual acquaintances, people who knew my family but hadn't been in touch with me for a while. The messages were vague at first, but then it became clear. My parents were spreading lies about me. According to them, I had abandoned them when they needed me most. I was selfish and ungrateful for not helping out after everything they'd done for me. It was laughable, really. The same people who kicked me out on my birthday were now trying to play the victim card. I couldn't believe it, but at the same time, it pissed me off. I had worked so hard to rebuild my life, and now they were trying to tear it down by turning people against me. I called Ethan again, letting him know about the rumors. "What should I do?" I asked, my frustration clear in my voice. "Honestly, don't engage with it," he advised. "These people don't know the full story, and your parents are banking on the fact that you'll get defensive and try to explain yourself. Don't give them that satisfaction. We'll handle this in court if it gets that far, and trust me, you've got nothing to worry about." It wasn't easy taking Ethan's advice. My first instinct was to blast the truth to anyone who would listen, to tell them how my family had treated me and why I had every right to cut them off. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Ethan was right. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I knew the truth, and that was enough. Weeks passed, and the legal proceedings moved forward. Ethan was a beast in the courtroom, and when the restraining order was finalized, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. My family couldn't come near me, and if they tried to pull any more stunts, they'd be in serious legal trouble, but that wasn't the end of their problems. Remember those financial issues Ethan had mentioned? Well, it turns out they were worse than we thought. After some more digging, Ethan found out my parents had been dodging taxes for years. They'd been hiding money and falsifying documents, and now the IRS was on their tail. It was almost poetic, watching the mess they had made for themselves unravel right in front of them. As much as I wanted to feel bad for them, I couldn't. They had brought this on themselves. They had made their choices, and now they had to deal with the consequences. I wasn't going to be their savior anymore. One day after everything had settled down, I sat in my living room, staring out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. It was strange feeling a sense of closure finally. I had spent so long feeling trapped by my family's expectations, by their manipulation and guilt trips. And now, for the first time, I felt free. Ethan called later that night to check in. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm good," I said. And for the first time in a long time, I actually meant it. "It's been a crazy ride, but I'm good." "You did the right thing, Ryan," Ethan reassured me. "They made their choices and you made yours. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." I smiled to myself. He was right. I had stood up for myself, and I wasn't going to feel guilty for it. For too long, I had let my family control how I felt, how I acted. And now, I was finally in control of my own life. And that felt damn good.